You know, this idea, will humanity split into two species, one's enhanced and one left behind, it sounds like the plot of some Black Mirror episode, right? But seriously, it's a question that a lot of people are asking as we see technology racing ahead, especially in fields like genetic engineering, AI-driven brain enhancement, and wearable tech. And let's take a second to really imagine what that could look like. Think about your daily life. You probably know someone who already uses a smartwatch to track their sleep, their heart rate, and probably even their stress levels. Maybe you have friends dabbling in nootropics or using apps that recommend how they should eat or exercise based on their DNA. Now, for most people, these are just cool gadgets or interesting science projects. But for a growing number, especially those willing and able to spend more, this tech isn't just about convenience, it's about optimization. So let's take that further. Imagine a world, maybe not that far away, where some people can afford to modify their bodies or minds in ways that fundamentally change what it means to be human. We're talking about gene therapies that extend life by decades, neural implants that allow you to learn new languages in weeks instead of years, or even digital assistants sync directly to our thoughts. The catch? Right now, all this stuff is expensive. It's a privilege for the wealthy, or at least the early adopters, with access to resources and education. Now, let's switch perspectives. Imagine you're someone who's working 2 jobs, barely making rent, or maybe you live in a part of the world without reliable internet, let alone clinics offering bioenhancements. Not only do you have less access to these new technologies, you might not even hear about them until they're old news. Over time, that gap widens. The enhanced can run faster, learn quicker, maybe even live longer and worry less about disease. The rest? They're stuck in the systems we have today. This isn't just science fiction. We've already seen this pattern in history, right? Electricity, the telephone, the internet, all life-changing, but not available to everyone at once. It started with the few, then, sometimes, spread to the many, but not always equally or fairly. Inequality can bake itself into the very infrastructure of change. The divides created by new technology can persist for generations. And here's where I think things get tricky. The phrase, two species, might sound dramatic, but what it really gets at is this: when our abilities and lifespans are dictated by access to technology, we've got a recipe for a new kind of inequality, deeper and more entrenched than anything we've seen before. Some ethicists even call it a speciation event, not necessarily meaning literal new species like Homo sapiens versus Neanderthals, but rather a social and even a moral separation, where different versions of humanity coexist with minimal overlap. Let's take a closer example: education. Today, the right schooling and resources can already shape life outcomes, but imagine if one group of children could receive neural enhancements, say, a memory-boosting brain-computer interface, while others couldn't even afford basic schooling. What do you imagine that does to our society, our politics, even the very idea of meritocracy or fairness? Over time, this isn't just a gap in income or opportunity. It becomes a gap in capability and potentially even in how empathy and community function. But let's pause for a second, because it isn't all dystopian. There are other paths we could take. For instance, what if we learn from previous technological revolutions and build policies that guarantee equal access, not just in theory, but in practice? Universal healthcare, free education, and strong safety nets did a lot to level the playing field with past technologies. Maybe we can do the same for enhancement technologies, if we make it a priority. And let's not forget, every generation has had its own technological divide. When literacy first arose, there were the literate and the illiterate, a real difference in how people experienced the world. Today, almost everyone in most countries can read, and we don't think of that as making someone more or less human. But the critical difference is that, with enough collective will and effort, we made literacy, and later, electricity or the internet, available to almost everyone. So we have to ask ourselves, do we want a future where tech divides us deeper than ever before, or do we want to steer the singularity towards something that uplifts us all? What kind of world do we want for ourselves and the generations to come? And what does it even mean to be left behind? Is it a lack of intelligence, or of access, or maybe even a lost sense of belonging as society becomes more stratified? If we find ourselves surrounded by people with vastly different abilities, would we still feel like one human family, or would we drift apart, culturally and emotionally? The solutions aren't simple. In fact, they demand that we pay attention now, before the gap becomes unbridgeable. It's about policy, yes, but also about the values we share and the kind of world we want to build. It's going to take a conversation that includes everyone: tech innovators, policymakers, ethicists, teachers, and activists like you and me. So, to answer the question, are we about to split into two species? Maybe not in the strict biological sense, but there's a real risk of deep divides, unless we actively work to prevent them. The choices we make in the next decade will determine whether technology enhances humanity as a whole, or just a privileged few. If you care about where the singularity is taking us, and especially if you want to be part of the conversation on how to create a future that lifts everyone up, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We need your voice, your perspective, and your action. Together, let's advocate for a future where no one gets left behind. Thank you all for being here, and let's keep this essential conversation going.